I would like to welcome to the stage Nelfor, who will give her perspective on our scenario closer to home.
Don't mind me, folks. So, how many of you are from Canada? Show of hands. All right, cool. I'm not. It's all right. But when my husband and I came to Canada, 1995, we rented a tiny apartment in Scarborough, and it was a fine apartment for a young couple. I hated it because I lived on the 11th floor. Don't like heights very much. Anyways, I vowed to never live in an apartment on the highest floor, or in the tallest apartment anyways. But as I got older, I visited a condo where I went with my grandson, Faisal, and it was one of the tallest buildings I have ever seen. It had the sun shining and these angled, sculpted pieces that looked like artichoke leaves. Faisal was more into the carbon and everything, but I was more into the lighted flooring and those push buttons. That was more interesting to me. It means that I was able to get around easier, which was better access for me, because I, a couple of years ago, suffered a stroke. So I ended up asking the rental agent, where's the bus stop? I like to walk to the bus stop. And it needed to be easy because, of course, being in Scarborough and Toronto and, well, I should just say Ontario weather with the snow in the winter, I didn't want to be stuck at home 6 months out of the year because that's what happens here in Ontario, right? You get snow, and then it's construction season for the next 6 months, I believe. Yes. Well, then the rental agent told me that they had heated flooring, that the sidewalks were heated. Heated sidewalks. Think about that one for a second. That didn't make sense to me. Who would spend money on heated sidewalks? And where is that money coming from? I couldn't understand it, but I was definitely flabbergasted at that. The agent says that the buildings get power from the turbines, built into the top, and from solar panels on some of its weird angles. The building itself was surrounded by these heart-shaped or the shaped panels that whenever the sun moved, the panels would collect the sun and it would just move around the building. Connected to a neighborhood geothermal system for heating and cooling, and I always was a skeptic at such things. So I asked the consumer, how is a consumer like me supposed to know when it will deliver zero emissions? She tells me that the provincial government has new consumer protection rules to respond to all new companies and new technology. Faisal pulls out his phone and uses the iGadget thing. I don't know really what it was, but and pulled up an app. And on my phone, it tells me exactly what's happening with the heated sidewalk, if it's on and when it's working. The real estate agent takes us out onto the green room, and I must say it was very lovely. We sat down beside a bench with a magnolia tree beside it, and she left us there with my grandson while we had a conversation. He asks me, would you live here? Trying to hold it in that, of course, I would definitely live here. And I said, yes, of course, as long as you'll come and visit me. He laughs. It reminds me of the time when I used to tell him not to build castles in the sky when I was trying to teach him to be practical. Funny, he said, those buildings in the sky turned out to be very practical after all.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to ask Jeff Simpson to come to the stage and join me to talk about that scenario. Jeff Simpson is the Chief Financial Officer of Hydro Ottawa. He supervises the finance, treasury, regulatory, and risk management groups and is the chief financial spokesperson for Hydro Ottawa. He's a key member of the executive management team and advises them on matters relating to financial reporting, budget management, cost-benefit analysis, forecasting needs, and the securing of new funding. And Jeff holds an Honors Bachelor of Commerce from Carleton University and is a CPA CGA. Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Kate. Nice to be here. Nice to meet you.
So we just heard from an actor playing a character named Nulafar in the year 2040, and she is looking for a condo in Toronto, and it sounds like the world that she's living in is a little bit different. She's living in the closer to home scenario. Can you tell us a little bit about that scenario and how we might get there from here?
Sure, of course. And I think the one thing about this closer to home scenario is these are scenarios that were depicted out to 2040, and I think with the exception of maybe heated sidewalks and artichoke leaf architecture, a lot of what you've heard in the reenactment here are things that already exist today. So in fact, I think one of the things we thought about potentially calling this scenario was just status quo, because in many ways, just about everything you heard there is already in the market today. And the drivers that have put it there are market forces, is what I would call them, in a few different ways. The first one being consumer wishes, consumer demands. We're living it now. I'm from Ottawa, and we see it now in different developments that are already being put together on an environmentally sustainable platform. I would call the consumers that are in it now the early adopters, because it certainly comes at a premium from a cost perspective. But people are already indicating this is something they want. The other thing they've indicated, or we think we know that people want, and it came out in the enactment about having real-time information on your phone. I mean, we see that in everything we do now. So people having control over their power. Having it, within their control, right close to home, knowing when it's working, when it's not, knowing when it's high, low, whatever it might be. These are things we're already seeing in the market that are frankly real. The other market force that is really going to make this go forward is the technology improvements. And I guess like with any technology, as it improves in its life cycle, it also gets less expensive, and so we'll see more and more adopters of these different technologies as we go. And I guess the last piece I would mention for this to get really large-scale adoption, which I think by 2040 we can expect it will, but to really kickstart it would be, I guess I'd frame it as government policy, legislation of some kind. That could be senior level governments, provincial or federal, and we've seen versions of this already. But when incentives exist, part of my job is to follow the money. So when incentives exist, more people are likely to get on board, and you could take that even to a more local level, right down to the development or the building that we heard about in the enactment. I mean, if somewhere along the line, all those possibilities are built right into the building code for legislative purposes, then we're going to see all this happen sooner than later, potentially.
And knowing that we have several different scenarios that are possible, how do we invest today, not knowing what the future is going to hold?
That's the challenge right now for companies like mine. Is where do you invest your next dollar? These sort of scenarios, they are frankly a threat to the old school world of what the electricity industry is, which is generation in one place and transmission potentially hundreds of miles, and then distribution by companies like mine around a municipality. where do we invest the next dollar? We still have to invest in those sort of infrastructure needs for the sake of reliability for our customers, but we also have to be very much in mind that as we invest in those, it has to have the technological platform behind it in order to keep up with what's coming next, and also to make brand new investments potentially that are of a much different technology than what it used to be. So it's very much a threat to the businesses like ours, but by the same time, it's really an opportunity, because we'd like to think to our customers, we have the expertise and we're in a good place to be ready for those next possibilities that are coming.
All right, Jeff Simpson, thanks very much.
Thank you.